Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we're talking about the 2020 film Extraction starring Chris Hemsworth. We've got two special guests with us this episode. We've got Barry Nugent.
Hey.
And Dan Marshall.
Why am I introduced second?
Wow.
Someone has to be.
Come on. Really?
You're the extra special guest.
Really?
Oh, okay,
Do you
okay.
want to go? Do you want to go there?
We're all friends here, apparently. apparently. So this
Someone's gonna have to
yeah,
in a minute.
this is it. So this film was directed by Sam Hargrave and has a wonderful cast of actors, including Chris Hemsworth and David Harbour.
And Randeep Hooda?
Yeah, and the director himself, Sam Hargrave, was
dat?
in the film.
He is indeed. So yeah, this is a bit like, I guess, John Wick was directed by a stuntman moving across to directing, and this is a similar thing, isn't it, with Sam Hargrave, who has worked with the Russo brothers quite a lot before.
So was Crank though. So people don't give Crank the props it deserves, but that's just the same thing. People have gone on to do like really good things after that.
I didn't know that. The director of
I
Crank.
Yeah, special effects guy and a stunt guy. In fact, I'm sure, don't quote me on this, I'm going to double check it now, but I'm pretty sure it's the same, or one of the same guys that did like Deadpool and that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Neville Dean Taylor, isn't it?
Right. I know, because if you go back like 10 years, or probably more than that, and you said the idea of a stunt person directing a film, there would have been kind of winces and, really? But, Chad Stahelski came in, showed them what they can do, made a lot of money, and they went, well, I think he's got something there. So then when Chris Hemsworth found out about this, I think he was more interested. Plus, he'd worked with the director on the films. He'd been a stunt double for Chris Evans early in the day. Then he was a stunt coordinator for most of the more recent Russo brother films. So it was kind of keeping it in the family, as it were.
Yeah, he's done like he did like Atomic Blonde and that, which is your boy from Deadpool as well, was helming that.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually, when you look at
The
some of
fight
the action
scenes.
sequences. Yeah.
Oh, brutality in we said Atomic Blonde. It was almost like something out of Daredevil. The fight scene in the corridor in Daredevil, the mirror of
Oh my
that
God.
in Atomic Blonde is when she has that like 8-minute fight in a staircase.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and he coordinated it, of course. The director of this one, Sam Hargrave. So.
Oh, okay.
It's good. It's almost like, right, thinking back in the day for all of us, it's like when Jackie Chan was like starring in his stuff and stunt coordinating it as well, and like probably, I don't know if he was directing, but certainly was probably involved with how the look of the films were. And it's almost like we've come full circle, but then now Hollywood movies are doing that like 30 years later, in a way.
Yeah, because they're all like a lot of the time now. It's like people go up through film school and stuff, and then you end up doing like other things. So Sam Hargreaves, he's been like second unit on like loads of movies. You check it on IMDb, the list is like super long, and then he's done like stunt coordinating. And I think he just ends up like if you're good at something and you get in with the right people. Like you get to show what you can do, and then before you know it, you're making John Wick, Crank, or Extraction.
Yeah, and it's like a new wave in a way. It's like we've moved away from the quick cuts where you get a really good actor in, but they can't fight, so you just do lots of quick cuts, and you can't really tell what's happening. What I love about these new breed of movies is you can see everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like Liam Neeson climbing a fence.
Yeah, that's what you want. That's what you want.
Yeah. No stunt double required.
No.
Yeah, just 76 cuts.
But like for this film, they tried to get Hemsworth in as much as possible because he was saying that he'd do as much as he could, and then certain things they wouldn't do. Like there's in the fight scene that's towards the beginning of the film where he takes out like 8 guys and he's got the hood on. He gets thrown down the stairs. So he did much of it when it was in the room, but obviously falling down the stairs, they can't have him doing that. So that's why he's got a hood on.
Insurance risk.
Well, it is. If he falls down and breaks his neck going down the stairs, that's the end of the film. So the stunt double did that. But then, like, in the corridor and stuff, that was him. And Sam Hargrave was saying, if you throw someone to a concrete floor, it's really going to hurt. So what they actually did was it's painted, and then there's like a mat, and then it's painted again. And they can throw Chris on that all day.
Well, shall we go back to the beginning and what the actual premise is?
Yes, because we haven't actually done that at all. So
That is true.
Go on, Barry. Tell us about the film. What is it actually about?
There's a premise.
What?
I know the clues in the title. That kind of says it all, doesn't it? I know.
Dentist.
Nice.
Go on, Barry. Tell us what the film's all about.
Oh, what, me?
Yeah.
It's not my flipping show.
A valid point.
Hey, you volunteered it, mate. I'm letting you sneak in there.
Okay. Well, basically, now I've got to refer now. So Chris Helmsworth plays Tyler Rake.
Great name.
Yep.
It is a great name.
Tyler Rake.
It's just, you got no choice but to be a badass when you grow up. Really.
Yeah, you're a job and you're a garden implement.
True story.
So he's I'm getting this from Wikipedia. So he's a black market mercenary and former Australian Special Air Service Regiment soldier. It's quite cool that he gets to do his own accent as well. He's not trying to.
Yeah.
I think that helps actually.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
saying mate, calls everyone mate all the time.
Yeah, and he gets recruited by his former team members to rescue Ovi Marjan Jr. I hope I've said that right.
Yeah.
Who is the son of India's biggest drug lord, and he's being held for ransom by Bangladesh's biggest drug lord. So Chris basically has to go in and get the kid out. That is pretty much the story, and even that I feel like I've given it far more.
Yeah.
But the other sort of twist of it is obviously when the kid gets kidnapped, his dad's sort of main henchman, who should have been watching the kid, basically screwed the pooch, and he has to sort of go in to get the kid as well.
But do you know, can I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
I felt a bit bad for him because he tells the kid, he's like, right, fucking stay in. Oh, wait, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Phew, because otherwise you're going to have to get the bleeper out. So, he says to him, stay in, and he sneaks out in the night.
Yes.
And then his mate gets smoked. And that was, I got to be honest, up until that point, I was like, this is a little bit pedestrian, the setup.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. And I felt like it was really, when people are talking and stuff, there's some really self-aware direction on it. There's lots of, slow zooms that are unnecessary. At one point, when that guy, the Sarju, when he's talking to his wife, the shot is behind them. Mm-hmm. It's the back of their heads. You can't see them talking, and there's nothing. It's not a David Fincher movie. There's no subtext to that. I was like, it's a really strange choice, and you're kind of slowly pushing in on it. But then when the boy is out with his mate and they're smoking weed, and the cop just smokes his mate that, it really made me sit up and pay attention. I was like, okay, what? I may have misjudged you. What have you got in the bank?
There were two moments like that did the same thing for me. One's quite a bit later, but I guess this film's on Netflix. It's been out for a few days. Please see it before we continue to speak.
Yeah.
But when the kid gets thrown off the roof.
Yeah.
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 Because I thought I was going to, just the typical thing dangle him over as a warning, but he literally just picks up and just lobs him off the roof.
Yeah.
And I was like, this film doesn't take any prisoners.
I think weirdly, after I kind of agree with Dan, I think when that second scene came, it was still like, oh wow, but it wasn't. It makes me sound a lot darker. I was kind of expecting the kid to get thrown off because I think I think the movie had already established that he weren't afraid to go there.
Yeah.
So, but I think when the policeman came up, the problem with watching lots of action movies, and I've watched a lot of action movies, is you kind of get into a rut with it, which is fine. I don't mind that. I kind of sometimes like sitting down with a beer and I know where a film's going.
Yeah.
And I kind of expected that scene to play out in the way it was playing out. So, oh yeah, the police are going to come hassle the kid, and maybe the kid's going to get taken home and they're going to have another go at him, and then there's some big set piece later on where he gets kidnapped.
Yeah, me too.
But when the guy was like doing the whole sort of oh no, don't worry, just smoke, it's all right, you're only young. I thought he was going to smack the kid or something like that. When he brought out the gun and shot him, then I realised they were the kidnappers. It completely threw me.
Yeah. I think as well, I noticed from this film is because it's set in India and because it's a cast of actors I've never seen before, the majority of people, I had no preconceptions.
Yeah.
I did about Chris Hemsworth, and even when David Harbour turned up, part of me was like, oh, cool, it's David Harbour, and part of me was like, actually, do you know what? I don't want it to be David Harbour because I know what his character is going to be like, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas there's no baggage, so you've got no... Because you can almost read it like, it could have been... if it's Mark Strong who turns up as the cop, you're pretty certain.
Bad guy, always evil.
Yeah.
Crooked.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I think when the guy to like some of the bits in it, just talking about how it kind of where it is when it does succeed at the start and where it doesn't. I mean, that bit was one I really shot and paid attention. The other bit I really didn't like was your introduction to like Chris Hemsworth when he jumps off the cliff into the water.
Yeah, but they've done that as a motif, though, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't. All right, there's other ways to do this, like this fearless kind of like suicidal thing. I was like, you've got to, if you're all in at the start on that, and you've got to kind of deliver on that, and it kind of it was fits and starts. It kind of remembers it when it suits.
Do you know what he reminds me of? It seems to sort of focusing on the negative first because there's a lot of positives to talk about. When he kind of keeps having visions of his kid and dreaming of him, the two things that popped into my head were Lethal Weapon with Riggs.
Yeah.
And Gladiator.
Gladiator, yeah, they're both written in my notes.
Where,
and even John Wick a little bit as well.
Well, it's just that thing of where he keeps having that vision of the cornfield and running his hands along, and that's his paradise. I kept seeing the kids, and I'm like, now that I don't know if they did that just because they wanted to do it, or they did it knowing that it would create a shorthand. That straight away I was like, I have a pretty good idea what the arc is for this character. As soon as they did that, it was a signpost. I don't know if that was intentional or not. That's kind of what I'd want to ask, if they used a trope knowingly, or they just kind of were like, what are you talking about? That was just a really clever way of doing it. Oh, of course. Yes.
Because Last Boy Scout's another one. As it started, I thought, because it's the kind of thing that I would write, and I was like, well, oh yeah, it's a guy who's lost his family, he's maybe drinking too much, possibly suicidal, and you go, actually, I can list off an awful lot of movies where that character exists. But I think what lifts it here is just because it's a different setting, they don't lean on it too heavily, and he's just a really good, engaging actor, which helps. I think a lesser actor would not have sold that.
Do you think it lifts it? Yeah.
I think it signposts too much.
I think
because.
Sorry, go on, Dan.
No, because I was just going to say, both everything that you both said. Then I was like, yeah, 100%. And I didn't expect you to take it where you did, because for me, I was like, right. It was a bit like, Barry, back to your point, when you first introduced to like the big bad, the Bangladeshi drug lord. Mm-hmm. I was like, right, it's like Desperado's Buko. Do you know what I mean? It's like, right, I'm waiting for him to do something that shows you how evil he actually is. So when he throws the kid off, I was like, nah. And with like the damaged hero thing, like Pete Last Boy Scout is like a wicked example of that. And like it's a Shane Black trope, man. You like the damaged hero, but he does it. There's a bit of charm there, and there's kind of like, you start off not sure if you're supposed to like him, whereas in this, it's like, oh look, he's super cool. He jumps off cliffs. But, he's carrying some baggage as well. So, like, don't judge him and let's be kind. I was like, it didn't quite gel as much with me.
And he's a bit young in a way to have that kind of jaded kind of, I know there was kind of, this story was a little bit pulling him back in, but he just looks really young to me.
I think if you're looking at sort of character intros that kind of nail it, when you look at, and I'm using both Lethal Weapons, not just the film, but also the TV show, the first season, which I actually really liked and thought did a pretty good job. But when you look at the introduction of Riggs in the Lethal film, it kind of tells you all you need to know about that character, and just how like damaged he is. by what's happened to him, by his loss. And I think in the same, when you look at the way Chris Hemsworth is introduced, we like I said, we get the flashback. So, and it does work on the stuff that we've already seen in hundreds of these sorts of films, and that kind of fills in the blanks for you. But the fact that he kind of then just gets up and walks and jumps off a cliff doesn't necessarily make me think the guy's suicidal. It just makes you think he's just a little bit of an arse, really. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't. It didn't. Yeah. I'm not knocking it. I wasn't. It didn't make me sort of go, I don't like him. I don't like the film.
Yeah.
But it didn't make me think that he's this tortured guy.
No.
There were scenes later that did that for me. And in some ways, when he actually gets recruited, when she comes to see him, I think they did a bit of a better job there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when the guy puts his gun to his head and he pulls the trigger and he goes, this guy's so cool, he didn't even flinch. Because, but there's no clipping. I didn't think he did that. I think he did it hoping the guy would kill him. And there again, that's to kind of point to the fact that he's so tortured that, he wants to go to that thing. And I was like, I saw that bit coming because they've telegraphed it. So they've lent into a trope one too many times. That it didn't detract from the film massively, but it detracted from the arc of the character because they've telegraphed it.
Sorry, mate. God, I cut you off.
No, it's all right. Done.
I was because I think that this movie shouldn't be called Extraction. It should be called Telegraph. And not only does it telegraph it, but it emails you, and in the subject heading it says, this guy's going to do this. Like the second they turn up, I was like, right, Hopper's a bad guy. This is going to happen. And it's almost like, and I don't mean to kick the movie to death because there's bits of it that I do like, but it was almost as if like the action is so successful. Because one thing that John Wick and Crank do really well is like they commit to kind of an idea. Like with Crank, it's kind of like the comedy and like the lunacy of it all, and John Wick has got a bit. It's the heart of it that really, the action's amazing, but there is a heart there. Even when it gets a bit silly in the third one, you do get pangs of stuff there in his history and the stuff he's struggling with. Whereas with this, I think it was like the action is so good. Yeah. Let's just tick box all the kind of narrative points that we need to get us there.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the awesome action bits.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the awesome action bits are so good that you don't look under the hood. Do you know what I mean? You don't pull over and go, I'm just going to look under the hood of the Porsche.
He's a first-time director, so he's leaning into his strengths. He knows that he can do the action. Everybody comes on board, and he says, it's this kick-ass action film, and blah, 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 and they go, brilliant. And they're not going to go, but does the character have a good arc? They don't give a shit. Hemsworth comes again thinking, I'm going to kick the shit out of people for months, and it'll be fun. But you've got,
written and produced by the Russo brothers. If you're going to put your name on it, they put their name on what's it called? The Bridges one.
21 Bridges.
21 Bridges. Have you seen that?
Yeah,
I've not seen it.
No, I've reviewed it anyway.
Yeah, and that does that better. I think there's an arc there that and don't get me wrong, there's a place for all of these things, and as a Friday nighter it really works.
Oh yeah.
and I'm not trying to run it. It sounds like I am. I promise I'm not trying to run it down. But the mechanics and the narrative it's an awesome action movie, but it's really, really hollow.
But I think it isn't because I think there's some narrative choices that they could make if they were going over this film again. I don't think it would take a great deal to elevate the film because the actions are already there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of with is it Sanju who's like the other special forces guy?
Yeah.
Sanju,
yeah. So what they do with him, which I think is brilliant, is I didn't see half the stuff. I didn't see him doing the double cross stuff. And I thought he had his own game going. I didn't realize his plan was literally just, I just want to get this kid back so I don't get any more in the shit and my family don't get killed. And that was his art. And in some ways, that could have even been its own film. And Chris Hemsworth could have been the bad guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because in many ways, even though we start off thinking the Sanju's like the bad guy that Chris has got to get away from, we actually begin to realize he's not a bad guy. He's just protecting his own family.
He just hasn't got the money to pay it.
Yeah.
He doesn't. That isn't 100% clear. He kind of mentions it. He's like, his assets have been frozen. I know the perfect guy to do this, but there's the only thing I thought was because he does this thing of there's this perfect guy to go and get the kid.
Yeah.
But but we can't afford him, so we're gonna play it a bit differently. I thought, they're gonna hire him and not pay him. But why don't you just go and get him yourself? Because you're really good.
But I thought when you said that, I actually thought for some reason he was gonna know Chris Hemsworth, like from back in the day or something.
Me too.
He's going to be calling in a favour.
Yeah.
But what I like is so many other films, and I'm gonna go there. So many other films where you've got like your main sort of white protagonist, and you've got a kind of non-white character in there who's kind of up there with him. What I quite like is he was not even like almost as good. He was just as good.
Yeah.
As Chris Hemsworth's character. They made that point quite clear without actually saying to you he's just as good as him. Just by the way he moved, the way he fought when the two of them came together, he was just as good as him.
He was hardcore. He was
hard as hell,
absolutely
wasn't
hardcore.
He was hard as nails. And I think there was one thing, and I know it's jumping right to the end, that actually, and I really enjoyed the film, and like that it's a great sort of Friday night film, a couple of beers, whatever. But they did one thing at the end that pissed me off no end. So like where you've got and I don't even think it needed that little bit at the end personally. That's just me.
The end.
Yeah, the end. Where it sort of skips.
That was
no, it didn't need that.
So when the kid is in the pool and he's swimming or whatever, and then he comes out of the pool, and there's that shot of a person which could potentially be Chris. I just rolled my eyes. It's like, why would you do it? It's almost like we can't kill Chris Hemsworth. We've got to at least give the possibility he might have survived. And I was like, you didn't need to do that. And I think it took away from what you did with the other character, because in my mind, he got killed. Chris Hemsworth got killed. In my book, that's all good because they're just as good as each other.
Yeah.
But
and also, I think, sorry to jump in.
No,
it's really important. Like you're 100% right, because I think what it did for me, which was, I know I really run it down, so I'm going to pull it back a little bit now. But I think what it did really, up until that was the point on that bridge, I was like, okay, right, I get this now. You've got like the nihilistic, like anti-hero that's like turned into an anti-hero, even if they don't sell the relationship very well. I'm on board now. And the same with the other guy. And I think for both of them to die, so the kid makes it means a lot. It means loads. And then to have him like blurred out and it like, I know Chris Hemsworth alive for like Extraction 2, the aftermath.
Extraction 2,
I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
It's because up to that point, it's like a lot of like late 70s action films I used to watch where there would always be this thing where nearly everybody died at the end. Steve will know I'm a big fan of everyone dying at the end.
Yep.
But like things like that with a downbeat ending, and you just go, oh, but it was worth it because it's like some sort of noble sacrifice.
Magnificent Seven. Almost all of them die.
Exactly. But there's two things I didn't like about the ending. One was, if you didn't need to see him at all. But if he's going to see him while you're still underwater and you're looking through the water, because then at least it gives you a thing that it could be like a mirage or it could be like a trick of the light. A trick of the light. Whereas if you're outside sat and you look at it, just because they tried to play with this water motif. At the start of the film, he dives in and he's picturing his
it's that echo.
But he never sees his son's face at the start. But at the end, he can see his face.
Yeah.
Which is because he's been redeemed and he can now see his son's face. Because at the start, he never quite sees his face, I don't think. I think he's out of focus.
Yeah. I'm not sure he sees him at the end, does he?
No, he does. You see a full shot of
we
his
see
face.
the kid.
Just as when he knows, just before he falls. So he's kind of come to terms with his grief. And he does it, he's, at the start, he's falling under control. At the end, he's falling out of control. And then you go, oh, great. This this opening scene, end scene kind of bookend thing. But then, so the kind of, then the kid going in the water and going underwater, you think, cool, that he's like Tyler Rake was at the start, and I quite like that. It's kind of passed on life to this kid. So as soon as he then comes out of the water and thinks he can kind of rubs his chlorine-filled eyes and can kind of see him, it's like you've just robbed yourself of the actual one of the more poignant moments that you've made in the film.
Yeah.
But also, it felt to me like they've done the film, they've shot the film. Chris Hemsworth dies, he falls off the bridge, fades to black with the kid getting in the chopper.
Yeah.
They've then taken it. He gets shot in the neck.
Yeah, like there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, he then
Exactly.
they then take it to the studio. They have a viewing room, and the powers that be watch it and go, yeah, that's all lovely. It's a great film, but we don't feel that A, Chris should die at the end, so we feel we need to give a bit of ambiguity, and B, we don't like it that actually the bad guy doesn't get any kind of comeuppance. So let's shoot another scene where the bad guy gets shot in the toilet, and then Chris Elmas comes in. It just felt really tacked on.
Yeah, I think what you could have done is have it on the end of the bridge where they just fade to black and do the Predator thing. You get on the chopper, and as you're flying over, and he points to the camera, going, "Hey!" No, but you just what I would have loved to have seen is are the kids staring out the chopper over the water and over like the city that they basically destroyed, all of the smoke and the fire, and you can see the trail of destruction just to save him, and then
he's like, "I'm not breaking curfew again."
Well, it's that thing of he's seen what it's cost. And if you see the destruction and then you focus on the kid's face and there's that change, that awareness of his innocence is gone because one, he's killed someone, two, he's seen what the cost of being this guy's son is actually like, and three, you almost like, if he does have the pool scene at the end without the fade, you should have people going, "Oh, I'm never going to do it," and he goes up and he just straight away powers off because he's completely fearless, because he's got nothing to lose. He's been through the worst kind of hell, and jumping off a fucking springboard is nothing. And I'm thinking that would have been like more powerful, like he's not the same kid anymore. But I think you're right, it's that thing of well, maybe we need to have him still alive so we can possibly do a sequel and blah blah blah.
It just left too much, because there was that whole scene where David Harbour's character was kind of saying, but you can't just take that kid back. Yeah. Because actually, there's going to be a loss of face. What's the dad going to say? Bloody, bloody, blah. And okay, you can argue that maybe that's what he was just saying all those things to get him to go and kill the kid. Yeah. But there was actually he was actually talking some truth facts to it. Yeah. There's some truth there. Yeah. But yeah, when we got to that end sequence, if you hadn't had that end sequence, that's fine. It's left to your imagination what happens to him when he goes back. But clearly what happens to him is everything's all good. His dad's all good with it, and he's quite happy back in his own life swimming away. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So there's no, when you compare that to say Man on Fire, when you compare it to the ending of that, Denzel's dead. It's clear that he's dead. And obviously the kid gets rescued or whatever because he trades himself for the kid, doesn't he? I think, if I remember. Yeah. But you don't see anything else after that. You don't see the kid 6 months later, in the playground all happy, and you don't need to see that.
No. I think you could recut this film with a couple of extra scenes and shoot it from Sarju's perspective, where he's got to do this. He calls in the white savior who comes in. The two of them have a fight. He helps, then gets a call. And you could re-angle it almost. So this is a Hollywood film shot in India or somewhere approximated to look like that, with a pretty much completely Indian cast. Whereas if you spun it the other way and you shot it as a film made by an Indian director or full Indian cast and stunts and everything else, with a white guy that comes in, you end up with a very different perspective. It's like that awful. What is it? A Paul Rudd film that he talked about. Have you heard about this? Where he's like the only white guy.
Oh, yeah. Bollywood film, I think.
What's it called? It's like something.
I've seen bits of it.
Warriors 2, and it's like the worst thing he ever did, but he was the only white guy in it. And he talks about the experience of not speaking the language and shooting in a different country, and it just was like one of the worst things he ever did. But, not as bad, but you could spin it a different way and have this like that and be like, yeah, he that's why he dies and Sarju dies as well, and then the sacrifice is both of them, and it still works.
Yeah. I think as well, because this isn't a cinema release, this was a Netflix movie, they could have been really brave, and Chris Hemsworth could have fucked everything up halfway through and died.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
He could have taken it on from there, and it could have been like a really clever way of kind of getting people that aren't particularly open-minded to kind of actually, because the action would have drawn you in enough to keep watching. Because so much stuff being made in other countries, so much foreign language stuff is gaining real traction. I know there's a show Money Heist, isn't it? You watch.
Oh, I love that show.
I think it's the most watched show in the world at the moment on Netflix. It's more people watch that than Tiger King, and it's like, and that's a foreign language drama series, action series. So I think it'd be good if the streaming services could move away from the kind of star vehicle model a bit more, because yes, in fairness, a picture of Chris Hemsworth is probably what's getting most people to go to this film.
It's like number 2 in the UK at the moment on Netflix, so that's why, I guess.
But it doesn't have to be. I think the culture is interesting. Because
no, it doesn't have to be, because like you got like The Raid, like going all the way back. You got like It Man, or like Nikita. Like there's a place for it when it's done really well. I think you bang on. There's that thing where like you're half in and half out. Yeah. I think it's dangerous sometimes to kind of, and I think like with the current culture, like everyone like kind of flirts with that thing. And like I can't say whether or not they were doing that or not. If it was based on like a graphic novel, which I'm sure we'll go into in a bit, it's probably just lifted straight from that. But there's other ways they definitely could have gone with that, regardless of like kind of where you want to lean with it. That just would have made it a little bit sharper.
It's interesting because The Raid is supposed to, for ages, they've been talking about it being remade with what's the actor now? Frank Grillo in it, and directed by Joe, what's his name? Carnahan, yeah. But it's like, well, you don't need to. Just again, it's that kind of thing of like, people like this, but people, it's not in the English language thing. It hasn't got a star in it. We'll have to remake it for a wider audience. But I think the Netflix model is showing. Maybe outside of America more, but it's showing that it doesn't have to be that. If you've made a good film, you don't need to make it again.
Yeah, and actually, do you know what? Those two, have you seen their output on Netflix? Like the War Party film stuff. So like Frank Grillo and like some of the stuff that they make like really tight. Like Pete, you were on about like the 70s movies and stuff. Yeah. Like, so Point Blank, that had Frank Grillo in it and Falcon.
Oh yeah,
we watched that.
I like that.
We've done that one.
Yeah. And that was a tight actioner. And what was the Wheelman?
Wheelman, I've seen that.
That was a proper 70s little tight movie. Now I'm not saying because those were really good they could do Raid, but the point is like in the right hands, like there's not only an appetite for it, but they can do it really well.
And like the Russo brothers' name would also carry a lot of weight. That people will be like, "Oh, I'll check that out."
100%.
I think as well, and we'll go into the good stuff, but it's the last thing I want to say, which is about Sadju. I think if Sadju's character hadn't been in it, I probably wouldn't have gone down that road of thinking. But I think because he was in it and he was so good, and the way he did the action was on this exactly the same level as Chris Hemsworth's character, to sort of reiterate the point. Yeah. That for me, if you'd actually taken Chris Hemsworth's character out of this, and you'd give me that same story, and the story was literally kid gets kidnapped, the main guy says to the henchman, "You better get him back, otherwise that's your ass and that's your family."
Yeah.
And he's like, and he has to go to his wife and basically say, "Look, get the kids out. I'm gonna have to go and get him." You could literally have done that same film, and I would have been all over that film. The film was still good. It was still, you know what I mean? It was still good, but it's just.
And emotionally, that's a better film.
It is, but one thing that it misses, for me anyway, just personally, I think the one thing that I really like about this, that it's not that way, is like that fish out of water thing.
Yeah.
So he obviously, if you're from a place, like, like extraction points, how to get in, how to get out, shortcuts, all the rest of it, routes. Whereas like he didn't, and it made it a bit more desperate.
Yeah.
The fight scenes though, when he's running through the building and they're shooting, he's chased by the police, and it's...
How about like start with the rake, Tyler Rake using a rake.
They said they got to at some point when they were doing some of it. So most of that scene they'd obviously planned out, but when they got into practice, they rehearsed it for months and months. And when they got into the room, the director, Sam, was saying, "Oh, we suddenly realised that this looks better if Chris is left-handed, or this looks better if he flips him over this way." So they adjusted some things, and once he had the rake, they were like, "He's got to kill someone with a rake." Yeah, all right. So they put it in the room, and they were like, "Yeah, that looked brilliant. Do it, just do it." And it's just
that
like
was
they've got
another
to
one
do
of
it.
those
They've got to do
bits
it.
that I was like, I started paying attention again.
Yeah.
That bit with the rake, I was like, me and my girl were watching it, and we were like, ew, it's going to happen. And when it starts getting close to his eye, you're like, ew.
But the worst bit for me, and they do this so well in films, is like when they kill a couple of the people, and you kind of go, "Oh man, that looks like it hurts so bad," because it just looks like maybe they snap someone's neck or something. There's that bit where it's almost a wrestling move. He picks up a guy and then slams him backwards onto his head. And I'm like, ooh. And so you look, and then I've watched the making of that scene, and I said what they did was, they pinned the guy against the wall, they put Chris back in, and he's got a weighted dummy dressed as the same. So when he picks it up and slams it backwards, it's a really heavy dummy, so it makes it look like a person. And then obviously you put the Foley stuff in later on.
Sound on, yeah.
But it just looks incredible, and then because you're wincing and you're going, oh no, because it just looks so wrong. But they're just so good at that. And again, he's a stunt coordinator. He knows exactly what to do and how to make it effective.
The fight scenes in this are phenomenal, and I think I was going to say it before, but in John Wick, the films, it tends to be. He starts off fighting the people who you probably don't recognise that are really good. And then as he gets further up the food chain, he starts fighting people that are slightly more famous and they're not as good as him. And you can start to tell in the third one in particular, you're like, yeah, he's kind of beating the really bad guys. This is pointless. Sorry, Mark Dacascos, but you're getting old. This is pointless. You've taken on the two guys from the raid. This is absolutely pointless.
They were amazing.
But here it is... because it is like a stunt-driven film, and it's so fluid because so much is done either one take or made to look like one take. I felt like I was at times. I felt like I was actually there, or I was playing a computer game, and that this is the least notes I've ever taken on a film we've done because I couldn't, because I was literally physically on the end of my seat and drawn in. I mean, the car chase. Which I've seen how that was done. It's like a 12-minute one shot, and you are basically on the bonnet.
The camera work is balletic in that.
But that's because the director was camera operator himself on that sequence and was strapped to the bonnet of another car in front.
I saw that.
It's amazing. Yeah. And you're like, there's no way he's going to do it. And they're like, no, he's on there for like 3 hours strapped up with a mask on. And he's like, go at full speed. And I'm like, this is insane. But he knows just what he's doing.
And there's some clever stuff very similar to in both the Raid movies. Because in Raid 2, I think it is, one of the stuntmen is disguised as the car seat. So he's dressed as he's wearing the car seat. So they can pass the camera to him. Because what they do quite a lot is they'll pass a camera from one side through the car and out the other side to make it one shot, even though it's being passed through. So there's a few times on here you can notice that. But yeah, it's that fluid motion, and it's the amount of work that must go into making that work and feel so fluid. And with an actor, because you think like years ago you had people that were very good at physical action, but they couldn't act particularly well.
Do you want to name some names, Pete? Come on.
No, just in case they know where I live. Chuck Norris. Or you get people that have been cast for they're really good actors, but it's where you cut away from the action, or it's blatantly not them, or you just. But I think the other thing this has moved towards is stuntmen directing, but also casting actors who can really act, but also have the physicality. Yeah. The same as Keanu, really, and I can imagine Jason Momoa doing stuff as well. But it's like that you believe that they can do what they can do.
Oh yeah.
But I think as well that sequence it was. I mean. All of it was brilliant. I mean, sort of going back from that, I really liked. I'm a big fan of like little things in action scenes, and what I really liked is when you're sort of driving a car and she's guiding him through the city, and she's like, "Take a left," and he goes, and she's like, "No, you've gone past it," and he's like, and he goes, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And it's swearing in films. I think a lot of the time is done wrong. It doesn't feel natural. It just feels like wouldn't it be good to have a swear word here, but. When he keeps dropping off, for fuck's sake, it just works because he just sounds so frustrated. And there's a bit where he's on his phone and he just goes, "I'm going survival mode." I don't even know what that means. He just does something to the phone. He's like, "I'm survival mode," and she knows what he means. And I just think, as a team as well, I was quite sad that most of them got taken out, but they were a well-oiled machine. So when they went to actually do the extraction, forget the stuff when it went wrong. When they actually went to the extraction, he went in, clocked where everyone was, clocked what the situation was. And he was like, "Right, yep, I'll be back." And then when he goes back in, there's no mess. Everything is double taps. which is what I like. There's no messing. It's like, I'm not here to mess about with no one. This ain't the A team. No one's getting up after I'm done.
Nope.
Do you know? And even when people weren't dead yet and they were just getting knocked about, you just felt every punch. There was a guy he threw and his head kind of hit part of the wall or something, and I was just like, oh man. And then the dude got up. I'm like, why are you getting up? Why is anyone getting? It's no. And then I thought this film had the best dry slap I've ever seen in a film when he was fighting the kids. He gave that.
And he's like,
he gave that kid 2 chances. One chance. When he came back the second time, I'm like, just break his leg or something.
Yeah.
Because,
doesn't he say he slaps himself? Just fuck off. He's something like that.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, obviously it came back to haunt him, but still.
Yeah.
Which is very, very Saving Private Ryan, that bit, I think. But I the same in my notes. I've got I thought it was going to be a one-man army. And again, because they lent into those big tropes at the start, I thought, here comes another one. And then when the fact he had this amazing team around him, and it was all like perfectly kind of properly scoped out and stuff, I thought that was great.
And Sergio took out 2 guys on the boat. Then he takes out the sniper, who is the director. And I'm like, whoever's in the boat, because he's got a mask on, you don't know who it is at first. I'm like, that guy's amazing. Who is he? And then he takes the mask off, and you're like, oh, okay. It's almost like a kind of Winter Soldier moment where the mask comes off, and you're going, oh, because he said he's going to hire someone. I'm thinking, who is this guy? Who is it? And then he turns up. I'm thinking, oh, it's someone completely different.
What about when Chris Hemsworth punches the guy with the helmet on? Do you see that? So you know when they first hide in the flats and the SWAT team come up?
Yeah.
And then he knifes that first guy in the neck. And then 2 guys turn up and he's wrestling with them. He ties their guns up. Another guy comes from behind him, right? And he smokes them. But there's one guy who's got the kid basically around the neck with the gun, and Chris Hemsworth punches him in the side of the helmet, and the guy goes down.
Yeah, he takes out a lot of people. Some of them, when they've got body armor and helmets, he shoots them, and they start getting back up. So he waits to lift their helmet or their neck and just shoots them again. I'm like, just stay down, man. Come on.
What I loved about that sequence is you get him taking out the police guy. The kid runs off. The copper's chasing him, and then just when you think Chris comes out of nowhere, takes that guy. But it's then when Sanju then comes out of nowhere. I'd almost forgotten about him.
Yeah.
And then when he comes out,
he smacked up the car crash. He was in the cop car, wasn't he?
Yeah, the truck hit him with the truck.
Because he hit him with a lorry. Yeah.
That was after.
That was it. This goes, And he goes, that's it.
But I think someone had said in one of the reviews that sequence with him almost reminded you, and then later on when he's kind of fixing his nose, it almost set him up in the kind of Terminator mode.
Yeah. True. But he rings his family and says, to his wife, if I'm not back, take the money and go. So
I don't think I'd like to have been in that sewer.
No. That was rank.
That was pretty grim.
Proper rank.
Yeah.
So what do you know about the graphic novel then, Pete?
Yeah, so the graphic novel is actually called Ciudad, and it's set in Paraguay. Okay. Not in India. It is the same central character. It's written by Joe Russo with Andy Parks, and the art's by Fernando Leon Gonzalez. Actually, it's both the brothers, I think, wrote the graphic novel, Joe and Anthony Russo. Yeah, but the difference, instead of a boy, it's a woman that he's going to rescue. So the central premise of going in to extract somebody is the same, but it's a different person that he's rescuing. But from what I haven't read it, but from the notes I've read about it, it's so they've moved the whole thing from being in Paraguay. I mean, it's even the name of the book is the name of the place in Paraguay which inspired the story, but then they've completely moved it to India.
Do you know what I was thinking as well? With his team, we always talk about sort of potential for sequels and stuff, and I think you could have done a sequel without Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
Just because of that sequence you had at the end where she kind of goes into the bathroom and sort of takes him out, but also like her on the bridge and stuff like that, and she's kind of basically running point. She does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the actual setup of the team and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would be quite happy to watch another film with her and some different team members doing another extraction somewhere else.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
I would too.
Yeah, that's a good thing. But then again, they've made this a star vehicle for Chris Hemsworth, haven't they? So they put the thing at the end. So if they do another one, they can bring him back. But it's like, is it Sicario where some of the main cast don't come back in the second one?
Yeah.
So I've seen the first one.
Doesn't come back.
Right. So I've seen the first one, but I haven't seen the second one. Does it suffer at all? As the kind of thing is like, does the film suffer or not?
It doesn't, because it's a completely different movie. It's not like it's about the cartels, but it's not about. Do you know, like in Sicario, it's about kind of. She's not green, but it's her being exposed to like the super grey battle they're having, i.e., like the CIA, and they're working with some cartels and not with others in order to try and stop the cartel, and her kind of getting to grips with that or not being able to get to grips with it. The second one, it's not about that. It's just about other problems with the battles against the cartels, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So they could have changed the shape of this in the end. So as they did a second one, it would have been something slightly different. I mean, not to bring it up because it is kind of a bad thing, but with Taken, the first one was amazing, and then the second one, you're like, okay, and the third one, oh god, this guy's just ridiculous. They could have done that as well. They could have done something really interesting within that space.
What, in Taken?
I don't know. It's like John Wick. They're now talking about doing a spin-off set in that world, and there's the TV show, and they're now talking about film with some ballerina that you saw in the third one. I'm like,
I almost want the things I like not to be very successful. Just so they can naturally be what they're supposed to be, But what did you all think about it? Because I'm not always a fan of kind of the opening being a bit like the end. So it reminded me of like Carlito's Way, I think. He gets shot at the start and then it ends with that, or films like...
The difference is with Carlito's Way is that it's so good in how it unfolds the story. By the end, you forgot that you saw the end of the beginning.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
This is a little bit... You want about the motifs?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah, just the fact that you saw part of the end sequence at the start, I guess.
Where I thought it was like... Where it could have worked is almost like I didn't like it at the start. I think it was a bit too high. Like the fall and him sitting under the water was just a bit too much for me. But it kind of made it make sense if at the end, like him and the kid don't talk about that. So the fact that the kid does it almost as like a post-traumatic thing, it's just like, right, he's seeking quiet just because, if it's getting too much, this is him just trying to like digest it or whatever. I thought was quite good. But then, for a million different reasons, it's completely undermined then by the blurry Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
I think so obviously it starts that sort of sequence, part of the sequence on the bridge. I kind of want to go back and rewatch the scene because obviously at the end when he's moving through the bridge, it's the same sort of sequence, but he stops because he has a quick look at Saju because he sees that Saju is dead.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if that's in that sequence at the beginning.
Don't think so. No, it's not. No,
it's not.
Him.
No, okay. That would telegraph it, I think, and I would have noticed that.
Okay.
That is
weirdly, I would have quite liked that if that was the case, because it almost would have been that, at the beginning, it just seems like another faceless corpse. And then obviously by the time you get to the end, you realise he was a really important character. But other than, if that isn't the case, then it didn't need it, because you kind of thought, you kind of knew to a certain extent, well, he's not going to die at that point.
Yeah, and you also lose the questions then, which is what you mentioned earlier about when he kind of like unmasks, like all the questions that are raised. If you had that at the start, like they're all gone because you're waiting for him to do that.
Yeah. Enough with the yak. What is your score?
Right. Are we ready to give it some scores then?
I think so.
Okay. I guess go first. Barry, scores 1 to 5, 5 being the max, and no half bags.
Okay. Do you know what? Even with all the criticisms that I said, for this show's bags of action, so in terms of bags of action, I'm giving it a 4, because that's what it had.
That's fair.
Yes.
Dan?
It's a 2 for me. I think like the action.
Whoa.
No. I'll explain to you why you all suck through your teeth. Let me tell you what's up. So, like, the action is sublime, right? And like you guys were talking about it, you're all bang on the fact that now they put like studios or like the money people now put trust in the effect guys and the stunt guys, because the effects guys and the stunt guys have been doing this for years. You may not have realized it, but they're probably better at it than a lot of the directors that are there. So when you see it, it's really good. But like some of the car chase stuff, like it's a little bit pleased with itself. Like when it passes the camera through, like it's almost highlighted. Like have you seen Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg in it?
Yeah,
Green films.
No, I haven't seen that.
Now, that car chase is fucking brilliant. It might not be as kind of visceral as that, but it doesn't draw attention to itself in the same way. And they do a bit where Pete was talking about where the guy is dressed as the seat and there's 3 cars. And not only do they pass it from one car to another, it goes to another car. But it's like it's really smooth and it's telling the story. So the fighting in that was like awesome in this. But where I can't... The action can't make any excuses for me. It's just like it's really hollow. I don't buy any of it. I don't care about like what would have been wicked is if like that nihilistic kind of hero that's like destroyed, if they'd done the relationship with him and the boy really well, and the boy like heals him. Do you know what I mean? Like that, it's a really wasted opportunity. And all the other bits that you guys were talking about, like re-editing or maybe making it about something else, right, in a different dynamic. For me, that's the heart of this movie. Like if you'd done that a little bit more, all the other stuff, I just care a bit more. Like when Hopper turns up, I might not care that it's like telegraphed that he's immediately going to be a baddie. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm interested, I'm distracted by them too. And just ultimately by the end, I'm like, do you know what I mean? I had an all right time, but I could have just watched like the middle.
Fair enough.
And felt the same way.
Okay. I'll go next,
Come
Pete.
on.
Okay. Yeah, he's a fledgling director, and I think this is his first film, so I think some of that might improve over time in terms of who he gets to work with in the script and making it a bit more emotional. But then again, you look at John Wick, and they improved, and then the third one, I think they just got a bit too up themselves. So I don't know, it's finding that balance. I enjoyed the action, absolutely top notch. It's definitely a kind of Friday night film. Have a couple of beers, sit back, enjoy it. You don't need to think about it. It's not one of these films where, even though there was subtitles as part of the film, if you missed something, it wasn't that critical. You can work out what's going on when you start shooting people in the face. You know what I mean?
There's no real subtext.
It's like, he's the good guy, they're the bad guys, he's going to shoot me in the face. That's where we are. All right, save the kid. Cool, I'm with it. I'll go out for a beer. All right, anyone want one? Anyone want? Right, come back. What's happening? Still shooting people? Yeah, okay, cool. That's it, I'm caught up. So, it is good film, though. It was good fun, and I enjoyed it. But, yeah, we've talked about some of the flaws. So, it's a solid 3 out of 5 for me.
Okay.
Pete.
So we've got a range there. So I have to go to complete the set or to win some sort of prize. I need to either go with a 1 or a 5.
Royal flush.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I would have expected myself to say pretty much what Dan said, but because I'm usually the one who says, "Oh, but there's no emotional core. I don't care about the characters, so I don't care about how good the action is." But I don't know what it is about this film. I think I love the John Wick's films, but they're so, as they've gone on, they've become so stylized. I think it was good to see something that was so well put together action-wise, but that was more gritty and more real world. So I like that about it a lot. It's an Australian in India rather than an Australian playing an American, or it's not the typical Hollywood fare, which I liked a lot. And I just think the action was so good. It made me much more forgiving of the kind of things that would usually really bother me.
Yes.
And in a way, like I think about the Russo brothers movies, in the Marvel universe, there's always like the scenes in the Winter Soldier, the fight scenes and stuff are amazing. And then you've got, I think, is it in Civil War with Crossbones at the start?
Yep.
Those kind of scenes, I always go, they're the scenes that really get me. And I wish they were longer. And this film is kind of, for about an hour, is kind of those kind of scenes just drawn out. So that made me really happy. So I'm actually going to give it 4. I'm going to give it 4 bags on the basis of I was happily along for the ride and not, for once in my life, not overthinking it.
Excellent. So, have you seen Extraction? If so, get in touch with us and let us know. You can email us. You can come onto the Facebook group. Don't forget to leave us an iTunes review. Thanks to Barry and Dan for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what he said.
And Pete?
Oh, actually, before we go, thanks again for introducing me second. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. No worries.
It's because we knew you were going to give it. We gave it the lowest score, so you know.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We
Get him off.
Took off a bag. He goes last. Cool.
And remember, my name's on the Geek Syndicate door. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's it, man. He pays the bills.
Boss.
Pete, wrap us up.
Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.